This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. When you're online, you want to obfuscate your usage to kind of hide your behaviors from Google and Facebook, your ISPs, and give yourself some other protections as well, plus the ability to report that you're somewhere else. And PureVPN is a great way to do that. They've got deals running all the time. If you sign up for 2 years, you can get a huge discount. Plus, there is a full month money-back guarantee. So if you try it and you go, you know what, not for me, no problem, you can get your money back. And you can find out about all of that by going to piltchpoint.live/purevpn. All right. So last year we talked about a build that you guys did at Tom's Hardware, and I see that we've gone kind of the other way with it this year, right?
Sort of. So we periodically do PC builds. We really aim to do about one a month, but sometimes it's hard to get in all the parts we need to do some of these special builds. The next build we're going to do, by the way, and I'm open to suggestions, is we want to do the lowest cost but best quality streaming desktop, one that's really good for doing broadcasting, of shows like this one. But the one that we just built and put up an article about is what we call the RGBaby.
I love that name.
RGBaby. Because last year we did one called the RG Beast. And the RG Beast was the most RGB desktop that you could build. And we used a giant case to fit all the RGB components in it. And it was huge and bulky. And so we decided, what if we try to fit as much RGB as we can into a mini ITX case? For those not familiar, mini ITX case is the smallest standard case that you can get to when you're building a desktop. So we set out to see how much RGB we could fit in to the RGBaby. And here's what we used. So first of all, we wanted this to be a good performing desktop, that can play games. So we did not just put, any old processor in it. We went with AMD. We went with an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X CPU, which is very close to top of the line. And we went with an Asus ROG Strix B450i gaming motherboard. Now, the interesting thing is it has some RGB on the motherboard. Obviously, CPU itself cannot have RGB. The things that did have RGB on them, which were many, were the RAM was HyperX Fury RGB RAM. But because it has very bright lights on it. We had 3 SSDs. We had our main M2 SSD, which was a Patriot Viper VPR 100, which is a tiny M2 style SSD, which is like the really small, chip size, but still has on the heat spreader RGB lights. And then we had 2 of the most beautiful storage drive that you can buy. Not the most performant, the most beautiful. And those are the T-Force Delta Max SATA drives. I mean, the performance is fine, but they're SATA drives. So they're not, they're not going to win any performance medals. But they look like, and these are from the company Team Group T-Force Delta Max SSDs. They look like an LED screen on top of it. Now, they are not actually screens. They are RGB lights, but they look so real. Even now, when I look at it, I think it must be a screen that's showing an RGB picture. So it's pretty amazing. For fans, we went with Corsair's ML120 Pro RGB fans because those are really quite good, and Corsair has a lot of good RGB stuff. For our PC cooler, we went with a Corsair H100i all-in-one water cooler. And for our case, this is a case a lot of people probably haven't heard of, even if you've heard of heard of all the case brands. It was a Jonesbow A4, which is a from a small Chinese company, and it costs about $200, and it's a really tiny mini ITX case. And the reason we went with it is it has glass on both the left and right side, whereas most only have it on the left side. So it gives you more glass panels that can really show off, that allowed us to show off the SSDs on one side while the motherboard and associated stuff was on the other side. Uh, so, uh, so anyway, uh, that and for our video card, we use a Zotac Gaming GeForce RTX 2080 Extreme because Zotac makes the smallest cards on the market, or at least some of them, and so easy to fit into a small case. So this whole RGBaby build was, had a price of $3,061.03 based on pricing of when we published it the other day. Now, what we learned in building this was it is really hard to fit all this stuff and particularly RGB stuff into a tiny case. The order in which you put things in really matters. And some things you may want to put and not be able to put. We really wanted to put in an RGB cable called the Lian Li Strimer, which is a power cable that itself is RGB that runs from your power supply to your motherboard. And there just wasn't room because that cable is thicker because it has the RGB lights for us to do it. So all told, we obviously had a lot of RGB for the for the small case, and we got plenty of performance out of our combination of 2080 graphics and AMD 3900X CPU. So it's obviously a system that performs really well, but I think it obviously was able to do things like hit 60 FPS on 1080p on most benchmarks, and even 30 at 4K. So powerful system, not cheap, but it shows you what's possible where you can get some artistry even into the smallest cases. You don't need to have a giant case to have a really attractive build. And why does any of that matter? Well, if all you care about is performance, then it doesn't matter. Sure. RGB doesn't matter. But a lot of people, especially when they're building a desktop, they want something that looks beautiful. It's an art statement. It's a personal statement. I don't know if it's a fashion statement. They want it to look beautiful. And so for a lot of people, that means RGB lighting. And so this build really shows what's possible. I encourage people to check out the article, which has lots of pictures and a lot more details, which is on tomshardware.com in the top nav. Look for the RGBaby.
First of all, I love the name. That's such a perfect pairing to the beast. But I can attest to when you build a desktop, wanting it to be an art piece, a fashion statement. The case that I have, obviously the machine that's in here is a little different because nobody sees it. But the machine that's in we're focused on performance in here. But the machine that I have in my office, I put it in a Razer case, obviously, I decided to kind of lean into the Razer thing, and so there's a lot of green RGB throughout it, it works out well because Razer's color is green, our color is green, so it kind of went well. But yeah, I put time into, even though the majority of it is not visible because it's in a desk. I put time in to make sure that everything matched. It was all green. It glows nice, and so I understand.
A nice desktop is functional art.
Yeah.
A nice desktop is functional art. And, there are people out there, just for folks who are not familiar with desktop building, who will do case modding where they'll take their computer and they'll make it look like something.
Uh-huh.
So, they'll cut it up and make it look like a helicopter or something. Or I've seen one that was actually a beer dispenser. So putting a few RGB lights in is the least you can do.
Indeed. Interestingly, to go back to the Radio Shack topic from the last segment, the first store I worked at was one of the slowest stores in our district. And Sundays, if we had 5 customers, it was a busy day. And so Sundays became like messing around days. And I can't tell you how many times we did custom case mods to PC cases on Sundays when we had nothing better to do. So it's fun. There's all kinds of interesting stuff you can do. My brother is in the middle of a Star Wars scene within this giant case that he has. Probably the case is so big that probably both of your kids could fit in it. It's.
Oh, I really got to see a picture of that.
I'll make sure he sends me one for you. But it's huge, and I cannot wait to see. He's got a thing. He's drawn it all out. He's got a plan, and it's ridiculous. So yeah, like you say, some RGB lights in a pre-made case is the least you can do. So this is up now with, I imagine,
Yep.
tons of photos, right?
Yes, lots of photos, lots of detail, different components that you can get to do what we did. So check it out on tomshardware.com.
Very cool.
RGBaby.
And obviously, a lot of times we talk about functional things, and it's fun to talk about the creative, the artistic, the silly, the things you can do just to, especially right now, right? Just to be able to get some creativity out while you've got less going on than normal. So definitely appreciate it. Cannot wait to see the photos and compare them to the RG Beast and see the pair of them together, because that'll be fun. And as always, I appreciate it, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next time.